Hey friends, we'd like to announce a brand new addition to the Gaytheist Manifesto family. That's right, we now have our very own unicorn here at the show. Her name is Plum Jollylegs, and Plum Jollylegs needs your help. We kind of got her on impulse and realized that feeding her all the candy salad and rainbow cakes she needs is getting really, really expensive. And frankly, we'd love to hire someone to clean up the little piles of rainbows she leaves everywhere in the house, at least until she's potty trained. If you'd like to help with Plum Jollylegs' care, you can head to patreon.com/thegaytheist manifesto and make a donation to support the show and help us take good care of our new friend. This week, we'd like to thank Ashley, Robin, Aaron, More Cowbell, and Satan's Swampy Asshole for joining up. Plum Jollylegs thanks you too. Your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. This is the Gaytheist Manifesto. Hello and welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined once again by my co-host, Ari Stillman. What's up, Ari?
Hey, wait, hold on. Do you hear something? I hear something. It sounds like some spoopiness on the wind. There's some spoopiness coming. Because it's October. It's the month of the spoop. Spoopy month. Yeah. that was really funny, Ari. Thank you.
That was funny.
I appreciate
really
it.
Impressed. You're good.
I'm so good at this.
Well, so this week we are talking marriage. That's right, marriage is what brings us together today.
And most importantly, to talk about how America isn't the worst country in the world. Although, to be fair, I don't think Australia is either.
I'm just hoping desperately that people were laughing at my reference, that's all.
Of course.
So, as it was for the U.S. just a few short years ago, the marriage equality debate is one of the hottest topics in Australian politics at the moment. Australian law currently defines marriage as, quote, the union of a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others for life, unquote. Of course, this has implications of excluding gay couples from marrying, and of course those who identify neither as men or women from marrying. So there is also no Ari marriage in Australia.
No.
Yeah, you can't get married in Australia.
It also sounds like divorce is illegal from what I'm hearing from that. You had to be married for life.
That does seem to kind of be the implication, right?
Yeah.
So to help us kind of figure out what the hell is going on in Australia right now, we have two bona fide Australians on the show, Matthew and Seiki. Welcome, friends.
G'day.
Hello.
The controversy in Australia right now is about this non-binding survey that Australians are being asked to fill out. So, whoever wants to take it, let's talk about this survey. What's this all about?
Imagine if your government put out a Facebook poll that would determine your rights to equal access to the law, and promise to maybe not actually use this Facebook poll to gauge how they would vote, but not if they didn't like the outcome.
Well, it's a waste of time in a lot of ways. If you can delve into it a bit, like as we will, you'll see that it's a $120 million waste of time.
Yeah, and so to be clear, I mean, this is a non-binding survey, right? They're mailing these surveys out to every Australian voter and asking them to check a box, yes or no, if you think the law should be amended to allow gay people to marry, and non-binding. So, I mean, it's basically a super expensive opinion poll.
Correct, and the dangerous thing is actually when people call it a vote, it's not a vote, it's a survey. In fact, the company running it is the statistics, the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So these guys have got nothing to do with the election and polling. It's actually irrelevant. It's just numbers and stats, and that's where the the plebiscite was the first thing that was going to be put up by the Australian government. We're putting up a plebiscite, which would have been a lot more money as well, I believe.
I mean, in the plebiscite, my understanding is that the only real difference with the plebiscite is that it's a mandatory vote, like everybody has to vote, but it's still non-binding. Like it's still just like a glorified opinion poll.
Does everyone understand what a plebiscite is?
No, that was going to be part of my next question. Is like what exactly is that in the process?
In Australian politics, we have, I don't know if you have it in America, but we have a referendum system. So when something is going to be changed in the Constitution, it goes to a vote for the whole country. And like Matthew said, we do have mandatory voting here. Everyone votes on a question to be changed within the Constitution. That's called a referendum. A plebiscite is pretty much exactly that, but without actually changing anything within the Constitution or law. So it is to basically for the government to get a mandate on a question of law without actually having to change the law. The postal survey, like Matthew said, is an even further watered down version of that, where they make it entirely voluntary, basically. And they do it by post to kind of save money, but it has opened up its whole separate can of worms.
So it's not just political theater. I mean, it's the system by which the Australian government learns what the will of the people is, at least in theory.
I guess because in Australia we vote for parties, we don't vote for individual politicians so much when it comes to the government that runs the show. And so having a mandate is very important to the parties. And so they do care what their voters, think they want them to do. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing for me that I find frustrating with all this, it's just embarrassing. Is the fact that we've been well documented, especially for the Americans. You guys have kind of heard us be a bit of a laid back, she'll be right, everything just take care of itself, grab a beer and relax, kick back, have a party, we're well known for just kicking back and thinking it's all okay, it's all fine. And I think also too, with the introduction of global technology, where I can be chatting to people here now in America, and I can have Americans or other people around the world listen to us in a little island down over the southern part of the globe, and we're very isolated in the past. Now we are part of the kind of global network, and we're being exposed for some of the things that people have thought otherwise. I even for myself have been. My journey in the last 3 or 4 years is totally. I'm pretty much opposite now from how I would have felt, and yet when 4 or 5 years ago, my opinions were just uneducated and I just didn't think about this stuff, and just had my head buried in my life, and never thought of other people and other situations. And does that make sense? What I'm trying to say there? Just really, you're totally just like, it's amazing how you don't realise how bigoted or whatever you were. You just don't. I personally have just been totally rocked by a lot of stuff, which has motivated me. So, and really passionately too.
And speaking of changing opinions, I was actually really interested when I was doing research on this and reading about it. I was curious, what the popular support in Australia is for marriage equality, and I was looking at the opinion polls, and in August it was like 63% in favor of, and just a few months later now it's 57%. So I'm curious, do either of you have a sense of what's happening that's shifting that public opinion?
There has been a really concerted effort by the No campaign. It's really scare tactics. They have been putting TV ads on. They've been doing robocalls. They have been putting up billboards. It's really gotten quite ugly. There's a thing called Safe Schools that is being used by the No campaign a lot in their tactics. And it was actually an education anti-bullying program that was proposed to be used in schools that basically, it's called Safe Schools, so it's basically trying to make schools safe for everyone. But in doing that, it explains about gender variance. It explains about what being same-sex attracted or bisexual or pansexual is, and basically just tries to normalize those concepts at a school-age level in a really age-appropriate manner. But it actually got scrapped by the governments who were researching it and trying to implement it because of the backlash from conservatives and religious people saying that, they would teach their sons to cross-dress, and they would, be play acting same-sex relationships in class between students and all kinds of bullshit that wasn't in the program. But they were actually successful in getting that scrapped. And now they're saying that the marriage vote, if it passes, will lead to that program, that very benign anti-bullying program being brought back, which just scares the bejesus out of, the cisheads.
Good God. And so yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's largely the same debate in the United States. I mean, it basically comes down to God doesn't like the gays, so the gays shouldn't be able to marry or be around children.
We know it, don't we? Do we have to say that they don't just like something that they're not used to?
Right.
Again, I'm in that boat many years ago, but when I basically was a Christian that just didn't really think about anything. I couldn't have answered some of these questions being challenged 4 or 5 years ago. But when I suddenly was coming out of losing my religion, for lack of a better word, everything just fell into place about just I just walked into reality. So here I am now, 3 or 4 years later, and totally in touch with reality and with what is true common sense. So
the one ad that the No campaign produced and have been playing over and over, the main scare argument from the actor in the ad is that she says, looking really tearful and fearful, my son was told at school that he could wear a dress.
Oh.
No.
That's it. That's the whole thing.
Isn't it amazing how technology takes you back and you can go onto Skype and talk to someone about 100 years behind, like us? It's 1910 here and the Titanic will be here soon. Like, it's crazy. It was so far behind. It's embarrassing.
I mean, it hasn't really been that long here for us, and we've still got a long way to go on lots of other issues. And
I know, it's crazy.
It's really interesting hearing talk about it is so reminiscent of the same-sex marriage debate here in America, and even beyond that, now that that's been settled and hopefully will continue to be settled, debates about, just same-sex relationships in general and the normality of it, and, transgender issues and all of that. And I'm sitting here, listening to what you're saying and thinking, like, I wonder if, people in Australia are looking towards America and saying, well, America did it and their society didn't collapse, so maybe it would be okay for us to do it too. And then I think, but then why didn't America do that for every other country that legalized same-sex marriage before we did, long before we did? Because again, it's the same fear tactics, like you said in the ads. Oh my gosh, my son's going to be wearing a dress and they're going to be teaching young children not to hate themselves from a young age. It's so terrible.
Yeah, I mean, no offense to America, but if you look at like Scandinavia, they've had marriage equality for longer, and they're going, really strong at the moment.
And they I'm assuming didn't recently elect a fascist.
No.
So yeah, we're not exactly doing so hot over here. So I don't know if using our society as the as the bar. I don't know that that's the thing to do.
We still beat you. America's number one at being before Australia and same-sex marriage.
Seiki, I'm curious. What happens in these debates a lot of times, and I saw it in the marriage equality debate. I see it in the trans debate, and I think it's easy to get caught up in like the politics and the arguments and the sort of machinations of the debate, and forget that like we're actually talking about a human issue that has real human consequences. And part of the reason that I asked you specifically to be on the show is that you mentioned that you're a social worker, and a lot of times you end up dealing with LGBT youth. And so what I'm curious about, I mean, in these communities? Like, I mean, what is this debate doing to these communities? Is it a thing that's galvanized the community and there's a sense of like togetherness and a hopefulness, or is it really harmful, or somewhere in between? Like, how is that working out?
It's really harmful in two respects. It's had two effects that I've seen. I'm actually studying my master's in social work at the moment, but I'm on placement with a youth and family center. So I'm dealing with young people who are at risk. A large number of those are non-cis-hets of some degree. It's had a real effect on them. The thing is, when you are so vulnerable, when you are so at risk, it's really difficult to be galvanized by anything.
Right.
Like, we're talking serious trauma, people who are dealing with serious trauma from a lot of different directions, and then having another aspect of feeling unsafe put on top of that. They really don't have the capacity, or a lot of the times the understanding, the mental tools to fight another battle, and on the same side, because there are young people who are not gay, not queer, not trans, who are cisgender, who are heterosexual, but who also have the same kinds of complex trauma backgrounds and who are vulnerable to ideologies, who are vulnerable to fear tactics. I'm also seeing on the other side of the spectrum, young people getting really concerned about, the things that they're hearing from the No campaign. People are saying, if same-sex marriage passes, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, and what's going to happen to the children who are like me, who were abused, who were neglected, who were, cast away. And so it's having some backlash with other young people looking at the No campaign and saying, this is going to make more kids like me. I don't want to see more kids like me. And it's just a clusterfuck, basically. It's really troubling.
God, I hadn't thought about that. So what you're saying is there are kids who have maybe gone through some form of abuse, maybe even by someone who is the same sex as them. So they see the No campaign drawing all of these parallels, and it's really easy for them to believe it because of what they've been through. That's kind of an important point to draw a circle around, because that's something that I would always talk about when when trans stuff becomes front and center in the conversation in the U.S. There's so many people who think like, oh, it's so good that the conversation is happening. And yes, it is good that the conversation is happening in some ways, but what we don't often think about in situations like that are the people who are vulnerable, because, for me, I'm trans, which is a detriment, in society, but I'm privileged in basically every other way. I have a decent job. I've got a good place to live. I have access to medical care, all of that kind of stuff. So, when these debates happen, I'm not the one who faces the worst of the blowback. It's tough for me to listen to. It doesn't feel good. It's not super healthy for me, but I'm not really the one who experiences the real world consequences. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when the conversation's not happening, it's a little easier to fly under the radar, and like people aren't noticing you because they don't know you exist. And obviously that comes with its own set of problems, but it can also be a form of protection, right? So when the conversation starts happening again and you all of a sudden become more visible, I think I think that's an important thing to sort of draw a circle around and understand that, like, yeah, in a lot of ways it is good the conversation is happening, but it also can do some harm to the people who are the most vulnerable in the community. So I was just wondering if you had more thoughts on that.
I have a fairly singular opinion about that. In that I've come to the conclusion that not everyone should get a say. And I think that's the most dangerous thing about conversations like this, when they're open to the wider public, especially on matters of like human rights and dignity. The conversation hasn't been directed by people who know what they're talking about. It hasn't been focused on well-being. It hasn't been focused on facts. It's been focused on emotions, which are an important I'm never going to discount emotions as a facet of any conversation or thought process, but it's been focused on emotions over the actual realities of the conversation and the people who know what they're talking about. As such, I don't think it should be open to. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's.
Can I help you there? I think, because from my opinion is that Australian government, for me, how I see it, all my life, whether it be directly or subtly, there's always been a way where they've told me how I'm living my life. The government essentially molds you in the way, and then but they've never really got my opinion on stuff. They've told me what I'm doing in my life, and the moment that something doesn't affect me at all, it's not a question for me. It shouldn't be directed to me. Then they ask my opinion on it, and it's dangerous putting that in my hands. It affects me, even though it doesn't directly. It does. I've got a cousin who I know would love to marry her partner and have her a wife, and I know of other people through other kind of sport and other interests and stuff where, it's not affecting just one person. It's affecting families and cousins and rellies and, rellies, sorry, that's Australian for relatives. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just really, it's a situation where when you see that type of stuff in the no vote, you're just baffling, because it is affecting a lot of other people. I mean, the big hero here, can I share a story about Tony Abbott and his sister? What an amazing story just within one family. This is the crazy stuff. The Christine Forster, she's my hero.
Well, you say it's an amazing story. You got to tell us the story, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Tony Abbott is the three prime ministers ago.
Yeah, I think Tony Abbott was the last one. He got kicked out by his party.
Yeah, he got kicked out of his party, but he's essentially he's the most extreme right wing. In fact, our current prime minister is more centrist, and Tony Abbott's a person who's very right wing, Christian, conservative. His sister is a lesbian lady that's got I believe she's got a partner that she's wants to marry, and even Tony's children are pro LGBT rights, etc. And so this guy he is seriously standing out like a massive dinosaur in amongst a lot of other people in his own family that are pro, same-sex marriages, etc. So it is really it's an interesting, and there's a lot of those type of stories where it is families themselves are separated by this.
A bit of insight into Tony Abbott. Well, he was the leader of the Liberal Party, which is actually the Conservative Party here, and the thing with Australian politics is that we vote for the party, we don't vote for the politicians. So whoever is the leader of the party, if they are voted into office, if the party is voted into office, they become the leader of the country, basically. But that also means that if the party doesn't like the leader anymore, they can vote him out without actually taking it to an election. So without it going to the full country to vote, they can change the leader of the country, which is what happened with the Liberal Party. They stayed in power. They're still the ruling party, but they changed away from Tony Abbott because he became extremely unpopular. He's very socially conservative. He actually trained to be a Catholic brother, I think. His nickname is the Mad Monk. And the interesting thing about his involvement in the No campaign is that he's been very vocal. And so the, not conservative people, the people who don't like him anyway, have been very up in arms against his involvement. But also his party, is looking at his involvement kind of nervously, because he is becoming so vocal that, they're saying, you're not the leader anymore, stay in your lane. And I guess from a political standpoint, it's really interesting what this survey has done to party politics in Australia. A man just recently headbutted Tony Abbott And then Tony Abbott went to the press and said, "Oh, look what the people in favor of same-sex marriage are doing. They're so violent. They're so disruptive. They are against society and children and goodness and everything." And then when they found the man and interviewed him, he said it had nothing to do with marriage equality. Quote from him, "All it was is I saw Tony Abbott and I'd had half a skinful and I wanted to nut the cunt."
Oh, that's incredible.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
That's great. He made sure he didn't spill his beer while he did it, probably.
Right. So, so bottom line, how do we think this is going to go? I mean, obviously we know that the polling, the polling results point to a yes. Obviously, we've had recent experience that show us that we can't trust that 100%. But we also know, right? Yes, let's all have a moment of cry. But of course, also this is non-binding, and you mentioned earlier that it may happen anyways. So, bottom line, Seiki, let's start with you. Is this thing going to happen?
I think it will, but I don't think it will happen fast. I don't think it'll happen soon. I mean, you've got the very socially conservative politicians, as you said, when the yes vote was really strong, they were saying, I don't care what the survey says, I'm going to vote no anyway. And then as soon as it became a little less strong, they were saying, well, we're going to have to take into consideration whatever the vote said. So they're basically just hedging their bets one way or the other. And to be fair, I think the people in favour are doing the same thing. So no matter what the survey says, it's going to come to a battle within Parliament, and that never goes quickly. One thing I will add that was a really unprecedented move in Australian politics is that 5 of the biggest mental health groups in Australia that are really on the front line and really vocal about, suicide prevention is a really big thing in Australia at the moment. They got together and they released a campaign saying that if it passed, it could prevent or, avert more than 3,000 youth suicide attempts a year. That's just something that happens in countries where same-sex marriage has passed. The normalization process means that 3,000 less young people are trying to commit suicide a year. That's really what my focus is at the moment, because that's close to my heart. So I really don't care about the politics when it really comes down to it. I care about those 3,000 young people who could be living a better life. I'm sure it's more than those 3,000, but, those 3,000 who are trying to end their lives because they don't feel like they fit in society.
There'd be more than 3,000 people. And then those 3,000 people and their parents and their other people, families that are affected as well,
Yeah.
That's
so.
It's a lot of people.
I mean, bottom line, I think it will pass eventually. That's the way the tide is turning. But in the meantime, until it does pass, those very vulnerable people are the people that I'm going to be concerned about, because they're the ones that are the targets. They're the ones that, on both sides really, get used as props. And that's really troubling.
I echo Seiki there exactly. But in addition, I'm quite confident. Like there was Seiki, do you remember, I think it was around about 2 or 3 months ago, vaguely remember, there was a bit of an uproar from the no side of things, almost complaining about the fact that the politicians had leaked out the fact that they'd vote yes anyway. There was I feel quite confident, and that's even from the Conservative side, from the Liberal Party, that MPs, Member of Parliament, have already just said, like, we're going to vote yes. And so I'm quite confident that it'll happen anyway as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I agree that it's going to take a bit longer, and the people that are against this are going to put every roadblock in the way they can, and really slow it down. But I don't know. Is there a part of me that's just thinks that the better of the people in our country that will vote this in? I'm hoping that the people are really motivated to say yes, have just been very highly motivated, and it's just going to be a landslide yes. My hope is that also what we see in the polls is probably an actual not an indication, but in regards to the fact that it's even bigger, and there's a stronger yes. But that's probably just my my positive, side of me that's
how
biased.
Cute your optimism is.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, cautiously optimistic, not the Ari
really
Stoneman story.
That's right. I know. Can I just give you a couple of little bits of information that's coming up, just to keep an eye on? So, the official survey is closing on the 7th of November, and the results will be released on the 15th of November. As I said before, through the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the ABS, wanting all the returns, like the forms, to be back in and returned by the 27th of October. So we've got another 25 days or so to get their forms in. It's pretty easy too. I mean, I sent that to you, Carly. Was just a bit of a photo to send you to show you how it is. It's simply just yes and no. And like I said to you about, it's like atheism. It's an answer to one question. And it's the same with this. This is a lot of people like to entangle other things on it, especially from the no side. But it is an answer to one question. So hopefully the ABS are getting a very positive response back. Let's hope the people, the Member of Parliament, and the people in law. Are overwhelmingly have to abide by what everyone says, and it's hopefully positive.
I will just say that the end dates that the Australian Bureau of Statistics have given, look more likely to be pushed further back every time a news article comes out saying that a pile of surveys have been found dumped somewhere. There are shady tactics being used to make people not get their surveys, which makes the whole process, come under question even more. And so I don't know if it'll have a clear-cut finish like they're saying it will, or they're hoping it will.
I was confident in the fact that there's a lot more new voters and new people going onto the Australian electoral roll, and that in for youth. So hopefully that's a positive. Hopefully this has motivated a lot of youngsters to vote. But what was really frustrating about this was it's a postal survey, and so it's a snail mail postal survey that, Arnie Beryl is going to vote, but a lot of kids and a lot of people, like kids as in, young, late teens, early 20s, not a lot of people really are going to in a situation where they're going to be able to post it off. They don't have a letterbox or whatever, and they're not in a situation where they've been registered up. So yeah. That was a bit of a concern early on. So that the Yes campaign has just heavily, got as I say, kids, young, late teens, early 20s from 18, because it's obviously an 18 plus vote. They've been really ramping up, getting people registered. And
here's what postage is. Yeah. Here's what an envelope is.
Exactly.
But the other side
why can't I just click a button?
The other side of that is that they are getting stolen from mailboxes. So, how much of a clusterfuck it does turn out to be, I think, is still yet to be seen.
Australia,
lots going on.
Australia, you are a really good place.
Oh, we are. We're welcome here. You'll be very welcomed. Obviously, it's not...
Well, before we call it a day, I want to give you guys a chance to plug anything. Seiki, do you have anything to plug? Podcast, blog, any of that fun stuff?
No. We didn't get to talk about Macklemore.
Oh, he was awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Great. Yeah, Macklemore's all of a sudden the Australian marriage equality mascot.
Yeah. Oh, I can't stand him. But good on him anyway.
Right, yeah.
At least he brought Mary Lambert with him. That's the only thing I'll say. He brought Mary Lambert and she sang her part, and that was amazing.
She was
Props
good.
to that.
I heard something this morning on Sky News about how they're saying that Macklemore, this kind of obscure, kind of a small, kind of time rapper from America, and what are they doing getting him over here to open up the proceedings for this big football event when we could have had an Australian act? No, they've never said that in the past. They never care about that stuff. But suddenly, when it's against their kind of ideals, they kind of suddenly talk him down. And but he's apparently big time rapper from America that's coming over here. and sending a really positive message.
Yeah, and I really like there was a politician from the no side that said, like, well, if we're gonna have Macklemore do his yes song, we got to have somebody sing a no song.
That was Tony Abbott,
isn't it?
Was it?
That's
Okay,
Tony.
yeah.
That's Tony.
I can imagine how popular that song would be. The song about keeping rights away from people as opposed to love and inclusion for all.
Yeah.
It'll just lots of no.
Yeah, that's one for the top of the charts.
But social conservatives make the best music anyway, so.
Very true.
Totally. I mean, obviously, we've all heard Kid Rock.
And Ted Nugent, don't forget him.
And Ted Nugent, of course.
I'm starting a podcast, the Aussie Skeptic podcast. I'm starting that, getting that going real soon, and have done a couple of episodes, but trying to find the right kind of feel in regards to YouTube and going onto Spreaker. So certainly going onto Spreaker with it. And we'll be talking a lot more of this stuff because it's going to only get more interesting. And the more that Trump kind of is allowed to kind of do what he likes in America, it really inspires, not just here but around the world. We see the right wing and extreme right wing kind of suddenly kind of clearing their lungs and feeling like they might get a say and get out of their little corners of their. You know what I mean? There used to be someone that you'd shove in the dark in the corner of those extreme, horrible kind of ideologies, and they're suddenly feeling like they've got a bit of a voice again. So, and that's certainly happening here as well. We got Pauline Hanson and other extreme right-wing people kind of feeling like they can actually be heard and get a say, and that's rubbish. So we hopefully, I'd like to do my little bit to expose some of those ideas anyway. So yeah, I'm at MJ Solster at Solster on Aussie Solster on Twitter, and I've got the Aussie Skeptic podcast that I'll be kind of launching more and more in the next couple of weeks actually.
Cool. Good stuff. Well, that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto. We are a proud member of the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative. We are a group of trans podcasting badasses working to bring more trans voices into podcasting and other content creation. Search for the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative on Facebook for more info. You can find our show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Gaytheist Callie. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheist, and I hope Ari's got a thing.
Thank you for calling the Ari Stillman Customer Service Hotline. This call may be recorded for quality assurance. For contact information, press 1. To hear about... You selected contact information. You can find Ari on Facebook or email them at aristillman4@gmail.com. Was this information helpful? Press pound to return to the main menu, or stay on the line to speak to a customer service representative. Thank you for calling the Ari Stillman Customer Service Hotline. For contact information, press 1. To hear about Ari's other podcasts, press 2. You selected Other Podcasts. Ari can also be heard on the Cis Are Getting Out of Hand and, if necessary, the SJW Circle Jerk. Ari's exclusive patron-only psychology show is available to $3 a month patrons at patreon.com/Ari Stillman. Was this information helpful? Press pound to return to the main menu, or... Thank you for calling the Ari Stillman Customer Service Hotline. For contact information, press 1. To hear about Ari's other podcasts, press 2. For the billing department, press 3. To hear about the time Ari did that really cool thing while no one was watching, press 4. To exit, press star. Thank you for calling. We don't blame you for hanging up, and we are not hurt. Goodbye.
Yay.
If you want to support the show and the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto and make a per episode donation as little as $1 per episode. You can also head over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. That helps us move up in the rankings and get heard by more people. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.